Hello, everybody. Welcome to Promo Perspectives. It is a live podcast presented by Sage, dedicated to giving promotional products, suppliers, and distributors tips, tricks, and insights to help them grow their businesses. I'm Gabe Gotay, Senior Marketing Coordinator here at Sage, and today I'm joined by Patrick Harvett, Distributor Sales Team Lead, and we're going to be talking all about order fulfillment. Patrick, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me.
Like I said, talking about fulfillment, as far as I know, Patrick, it's a super easy topic, not a lot to talk about, so I don't even know if we're going to hit a full 30 minutes today. But
I don't know.
But why don't we kick us off, introduce yourself to the audience, and tell them a little bit about your role at Sage and your history with the industry.
Yeah. So been at Sage now a little over 5 years. This will be year 6. Just got moved into the team lead role late last year, back in August. So came from out of the industry. So my background was all in advertising technology sales, digital media sales. So there's some crossover when it comes to like online websites and stuff, but I'm still learning. However, I feel like I've gained a lot of knowledge just based on conversations I've had over the years, specifically on this topic and the company store topic. So I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah. Audience, thank you all for joining us live. If this is your first time joining on one of these live streams, this is also a podcast, so we're going to publish everywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube. You can catch the version there. And despite what I joked about earlier, this is a huge topic, so Patrick and I are both going to be hosting a bunch of episodes that we won't have time to fit into this live stream. I think we've got like 5 episodes on this topic lined up, where it's going to be you and I. We're going to talk to distributor guests. We're going to talk to supplier guests. So go subscribe to the show. It's going to be a great time. If you are here with us live now, feel free to participate in the chat. You know, if you've got questions, Chris Jordan, one of our sales account advisors, is going to be there in the chat, help answer those. And if we have some time at the end, we'll probably take some questions from the chat too. So like you said, Patrick, it's not exactly the easiest topic, right?
No. Usually when we talk about fulfillment, especially in like an online ordering platform, that's the spooky word, right? So fulfillment and shipping.
Well, and I think kind of the core thing that surrounds it is that there is no single solution, right? So every aspect of it we're going to talk about, we're going to be giving examples for all kinds of different use cases. So if you do have some specific questions on any things we talk about, reach out to your account advisor with those, and they'll help point you in the right direction.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's no one size fits all solution. You know, part of what's nice about the company stores is you can kind of fit any type of need. So, you know, the common ones that you're going to see on a regular basis are obviously like, do I hold inventory, or do I have my client hold inventory? Do I have to work with a fulfillment center? How do I get quick turnaround products? So these are all topics, again, can be frightening, but there's things that you can discover through the conversation with your client to really figure out which one is going to be, you know, the best solution for you. So.
Well, and like you just said there, discovering what your client needs is always going to be the first step. So to kick off the episode, that's going to be our first major topic, is gathering customer requirements, right?
Oh, 100%. So first step would be figure out, you know, how many orders are actually going to be placed in the store, or I would say even preliminary stuff like figuring out their current process. So if it's a client you've worked with before, maybe you've sent them an order form or whatever. That's a pretty common situation, but really figuring out their current process, maybe how many moving parts are involved there. That's going to be kind of step one. Providing the solution, obviously, of the store or the online ordering platform will be further down the line, but discovering all the basically, you know, all the different steps that they go through to get these orders placed is going to be crucial to, you know, how you're going to set up the fulfillment process. So.
Right. And then, like you said, this is step one. Is the reason you need to understand that process is so you can find the pain points in that process. Because I think one of the biggest themes when it comes to stores is selling a solution, right? Not just selling the promotional products, but what are you solving for this customer?
100%.
Can you give some examples of what some pain points in that process might be?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, selling the solution is what you're doing. You're providing a new online service for a customer. It's not necessarily a product. So some of the pain points, I would say the most common ones that I see or hear is going to be the order form. You know, the kitchen sheet, the sign-up sheet. That's going to require somebody internally at that company to follow up with people via email or go walk down the hallway to talk to somebody. Things are often forgotten. You know, people might even forget to put their size or their color or whatever. So really you want to figure out that process, figure out how many moving parts are happening on your client's end to help provide that solution. So obviously in a situation like a sheet, you know, it's pretty easy. They jump online, they place their orders, and then you can collect all that data by exporting the cart. But and then other cases where the distributor themselves is organizing that sheet, or maybe there's emails coming in that getting forwarded from that client to that distributor. You know, really, I would say, where's the pain point for the customer, and then where's the pain point for you too?
Right. Then, you know, like you said, the order form is kind of one of the biggest parts of this. A few months ago, our coworker Matt was on the podcast. We were talking about sports promo, and you know, something came up there. Order forms can be difficult enough when it's all adults that you're working with. Like if you're working with a business or a hospital or something like that, it's hard enough to get a bunch of fully grown adults to fill out the forms, turn them in, and be accurate and provide whatever payment information. Let alone, say you're doing something for like a school, a fundraiser, a team, or something like that, and getting little Jimmy to bring home the form to mom and paperclip a check onto it and bring it back. So much is going to get lost in that process.
Not only get lost, but how many times are you going to have to send the kid back to go get a new form? Or again, maybe the parent misses a deadline or forgets to fill in a piece of information for little Jimmy. You know, again, that's going to the online ordering platform is just going to streamline that whole process. And it's funny you mentioned the check, because one thing people don't often think about is how is payment being collected, right? So when you are sending that form home, the parent sending back a check, who's putting those checks together, and how are you getting paid at that point, right? So,
or like, you know, today, because the check thing was maybe more when we were in school, but today there's all these platforms like Venmo, PayPal, and who's keeping track? Did it get sent to the teacher? Did it get sent to the coach? All these things.
Yeah, I had one situation pretty recently where it was an order form situation, but they're all Venmoing this one particular person. And there were cases where the parents could either have the child pick it up at the school or they could ship it to the parent's house, right? So this lady was having to keep up with, because we're shipping it to your house, you know, make sure you add $5 to whatever you're about to send me to account for that shipping cost. So yeah, it's just not a feasible option, really.
So once you've kind of identified the pain points so that you know how to pitch the store as a solution, then you start getting into the nitty-gritty of understanding, like you said, their process for the sake of understanding how you're going to be handling fulfillment. So one of those things up front is going to be how many people are placing an order, right? Is it going to be one person who's the representative of a company that's using the portal? Is it going to be a bunch of people? Like, what are some of the different variables there?
Yeah. I mean, it could be a small amount of people, or obviously a large amount of people that are in locations throughout the country or even the world. So as a distributor, you know, figure out how many people, how many orders are actually going to get placed here. That's going to help you determine, like, hey, do I need to probably look at setting up an inventory system where I'm holding or my customer's holding, or we are working with a third-party system here? Or, hey, because there's only 20 or 30 people, should I look at giving them kind of like an ordering time frame where they can order and then I can kind of bulk collect and place with my vendors? Because it's all about, at the end of the day, like providing your customer with the best price per piece, right? So, you know, oftentimes if you're doing print on demand or you're doing onesie twosies and there's no inventory or there's no collection time frame, it's going to cause the price to be a little bit higher per piece. So
yeah. And then I think the next thing after, you know, who's placing the order is what are they ordering? Like what products and variations you have. And that's going to depend on, that's not just the customer needs to, that's going to depend on your own logistics. Like, you know, we're going to do, like I said, in some of these bonus episodes, we talked to some distributors and they talked about how the kinds of suppliers and decorators they used combined with the customer needs is going to really influence what products they actually offer. Can you give some examples about that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think I mentioned this to even you the last time we spoke, but I always say less is more. You know, pick your vendors that can offer lower minimums if you're doing apparel or something like that. But also kind of what you were saying there, where it's like who's placing the order. If you think about it in this aspect, like a store doesn't necessarily have to be low quantity products. There might be a marketing purchasing agent that needs thousands of pens throughout the course of the year. Maybe they're doing a lot of trade shows. They need a lot of printed material that they can access through the store. So, and you can kind of combo that. I guess that's what's nice about having an online ordering platform is you might have the sales reps, or you know, maybe it's a construction company where they're reordering their safety jackets because things got damaged. So they're kind of reordering those on the fly versus and those are going to be obviously onesie twosies, but then you also have that option to provide like a bulk product, like a pen or a notebook or something like that. So
right. And then I think kind of the next step in that gathering the requirements is who's paying and how. And you kind of touched on that already, but there's a lot of different ways that can be set up depending on the customer.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, because I mean, it could go any which way. It could be the company's paying for it all up front, so the store is really just a glorified order form to collect data. It could be a situation where, you know, the individual person is actually paying with their own credit card out of their own pocket. I oftentimes see, and I think Jill and Michael on one of the episodes coming up, we're talking about how they incorporate promo codes and different forms of checkout, different forms of transacting, we'll call it. So, yeah, I mean, it's important to kind of figure out, hey, do we need a combination of these two, or is this one option going to be, you know, the proper option for you? So
right, and kind of tied into the payment thing too, something that maybe newer or smaller distributors who haven't done stores yet haven't really thought about is going to be like the different tax implications. And can you just kind of overview, talk about some of the differences there might be there that you need to discover up front?
Yeah. So, I mean, by no means am I giving tax advice here, so I don't want to get put on the spot.
How much can I write off this year?
But I will say, most of the time, like if a school, a government agency, a nonprofit is placing that order, odds are they probably have some kind of tax exempt identification number. So the thing where people kind of get in the gray area is, hey, these people work for this hospital, but they're paying with their, you know, the product's actually getting shipped to their personal home. They're paying with their own credit card. So odds are you're probably going to have to tax the individuals ordering. But there might be a situation where, hey, we're opening the store for, I don't know, 2 months or something, collecting the orders, and then you're billing the hospital directly. So technically the hospital's purchasing those products for their employees. Then you might have a situation where you can forego the tax. But it's definitely something you'll want to make sure you're following the proper guidelines.
Well, so like all of this we talked about so far, just to put a button on it, is the very first early steps of identifying customer requirements. You know, who is it? What are they ordering? How are they paying for it? And all of those things. And now we move into the actual order fulfillment side, which is where things get a little hairy. Before we move on, I just want to say I see Jill Houston is there in the chat saying hi. Hi, Jill. She's going to be one of our guests on the upcoming episodes, so very exciting to see you here. So let's talk about the ordering process, and let's start first by how long do you keep a store open, and what are some of the different options you have there?
Yeah, I mean, and that could be circumstantial. I think ultimately it just depends on what type of turnaround the client actually needs. So there might be a situation where it's, we talked about this, it was like a charity event, maybe a 5K race or something, right? So the event's only going on for a couple days. Anyone who attended the event or participated in the event will have access to that, you know, to that store open for 3, 4, 5 days, whatever, to place their order. So that one's going to be quick, easy, real simple. I always refer to that as like a pop-up type of situation. Or even schools, spiritware stores, where, hey, we're again using the store kind of as a glorified order form to where it's open for 30 days. Then I'm collecting all the orders, placing that order with my vendor. But again, there might be another circumstance where, hey, we need quick turnaround, so I need to talk to the customer about either purchasing inventory up front so I can hold that, or working with the fulfillment center, or talk to them about maybe all their employees work in a central location. You know, would you guys be open to holding the inventory? Then the employee just kind of comes in and grabs their order. So it's tough to say, and I think that's going to be a common trend in this. Is it's always tough to say because it is so circumstantial.
Right.
You know, there's nothing I can say to like, hey, this is how this works, because it really depends on the timeline of either the event, the promotion, what the customer has going on. You know, again, if it's a spiritware or what I would call an on-demand store. So.
Well, and like you said, this is kind of top level, especially this first episode that we're doing. We're kind of just introducing the topic, and I really hope that we are prompting more questions than we're answering, because that is what you and your team are there for, is to help people answer the specific questions they have for their customers to do more business.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to the next step. So that's going to be actually ordering the products from the suppliers. You know, when do you do that? Do you do it as the orders are coming in? Do you wait till they're all done? Tell me a little bit about some of the different options and variations there.
Yeah, and that's kind of similar honestly, it would be a similar answer to the previous. You know, if it's a store that has a deadline after 30 days, let it collect its orders, you know, and then you're submitting a bulk order with your vendor, you're meeting your minimums and all that stuff with your decorator. Now, there might be situations where, yeah, the store's only open for a few months, but I need to be able to fulfill every few days. That's where you could look at working with a POD, a print-on-demand decorator, or even vendor, where you can get those quicker turnaround items delivered in time within that time frame. But I would say the obvious one, the easiest one would be the inventory, because you're placing that order all up front, right? So, but I would say if you're going to do that or go down that route, make sure you have a good idea of how many orders, how many people are going to be accessing the platform. This way you're not sitting on a boatload of inventory. So again, not a one size fits all. The most common I see is, you know, again, the site's up for a month or two, it closes on this date, orders are fulfilled on this date. So I think the most important piece is making sure the distributor is relaying the expectations, you know, setting proper expectations, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've kind of got a question for the audience here too in that regard, because we have so many different variations here. Anybody who's watching live now, if you have a store, can you just kind of say in the chat, is your store, or if you have multiple, do they tend to be pop-up stores that you're fulfilling as they're coming in, or year-round stores? What do you see as the most common use case? Go ahead and throw that in the chat. Another thing that kind of involved in the shipping, and you talked about this a little bit with the POD, is, you know, getting the decorators involved. And those POD programs are really important. But then, you know, you were telling me about some of the programs like with Sanmar and these other things that save a middleman shipping step in that, right?
Yeah. So shipping's always a scary topic too, because a lot of people assume, hey, I'm charging for shipping coming from the vendor to the decorator, and then again from the decorator to the end buyer. It looks like we got a couple responses, which is great. So what I would say is, if you've never done a store before, or you don't have an established relationship with like a Sanmar PSST decorator, or I know we talked to SNS and Alpha with their CDN network. Those guys all provide free shipping from, you know, the supplier to their decorator network. So I think the CDN, I'd have to look a little bit more into it, but I think they have like no minimum, and I'm not sure if Sanmar does. I'm sure they probably do. Some people can probably correct me. But I think it's important to, when it comes to shipping, especially for you to have an easier calculation on shipping coming from you, or I guess your decorator coming from you, quote unquote, to your customer, it would be beneficial to work with one of those in-network decorators. So.
Well, and shipping, that is one of the biggest bears of this whole topic, right? Because I guess that's the next thing I kind of want to talk about is, we've already talked about when are you ordering from the supplier, where's it going to the decorator, are you holding it, is your customer holding it? But let's say that you're holding it, or that it's going straight from the supplier to the customer. Where are some of the options of where that can go, right? And how does that change the method that you ship? Right.
So I oftentimes see, like, especially with like the pop-ups that are going to schools, or, you know, even these like kind of charity event type of situations, there's no, like, the shipping's already kind of built into the price per piece, so you're not technically charging the customer any shipping. So a lot of the times you can have shipping set up to be distributed to one specific location. So if I'm a school, hey, all the orders are getting shipped here, and then I'm personally, you know, I guess distributing the products to the students or the parents or whoever it is. So that's an easy one. I think where it gets a little tricky is when you're individually shipping to people's residences, because shipping is going to be more expensive to ship to a residence. I would say more than likely, if it's shipping direct from the vendor, it's probably not going to a residence unless it's like the business owner that ordered 2,000 pens or something like that. But I think the benefit too is you can have a combination of the two. You know, they're, like we talked about, like maybe the marketing team accessing these products on the store. Then at checkout, you can have an option to where they can say, hey, ship to our office or ship to my personal location. So you can have a combination of the two. I'm pretty sure probably on any platform, but very much so on ours. So.
And can you talk a little bit more about specifically on our platform with the shipping, right? Like, what are some of the options that you can have on how it's selected on the store? How do you work pricing of shipping into either in checkout or into the products? And what are some of the different ways that you might handle that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the most common I see is like a flat rate shipping. So, hey, we charge $12 because most of the time it's onesie twosies. Your people that are ordering on the store are only ordering 1 or 2 pieces, so flat rate you can get away with. There's some companies in the industry that do a tiering shipping table where it says, hey, we always have this flat rate shipping, but your cost goes up based on the dollar amount you're spending in the store. That could be effective, I think, until you get to like really heavy items like tumblers or something, because we all know those are, if someone orders 20 tumblers, that's going to be a fairly heavy box that's getting shipped. So it's definitely going to be more expensive than shipping 2 shirts, no doubt. So on the Sage side of things, we could set up the tiering shipping table, a flat rate. You could even do a cost per piece, or if you're really savvy or have the information, I guess units per carton, weight, carton dimensions, then you can use our calculators that we have built in with like FedEx, UPS, USPS. So I would say the most common is the flat rate, though.
Well, and it's important to make sure that you figure out how to not lose money on that, right?
Sure.
Because yes, these stores, they're very efficient, and that is kind of the key selling point, but it doesn't mean that there's no cost or work still involved for the distributor. And it's not all about just selling the cheapest possible product. Like, I interviewed, you're familiar with Brad Gooch.
Mm-hmm.
I had him when we did a company stores episode before, and kind of the key thing with him, and we mentioned this up top, is not selling the products, but selling the service. And the market will bear you charging appropriately for your time and energy into those products, right? I think it's important. It's something we'll talk about in the bonus episode. Just to shout out Jill and Michael again. Like a big thing that they had said was this kind of solution allowed them to go from being a order taker to a consultant. And I think there's a lot of value in there when it comes to securing more business.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because again, you're now providing a whole nother service that's solving a I wouldn't say a serious problem, but it's solving a headache for some or maybe even multiple people.
Right. And, especially I talk about there, you want to encourage the repeat orders, but this is something you and I talked about a lot too. This is how you identify even the right kinds of customers in the first place, right? Is where are these repeat orders, and how even on the year round or the pop-up stores, even if it's just a pop-up store, that pop-up store might happen every single year, right? So
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about payment. We talked about it earlier in the customer requirements, but now let's say that they've actually figured this out. Go into a little bit more detail about some of the different payment options and methods that we have in place on our platform and why a distributor might choose any one of those.
Sure. I mean, the most common is going to be the credit card payment. So again, whether that's a company credit card or a personal credit card, that's going to be the most common. And I think that's a big misconception too, is a lot of people feel like they have to do credit cards. You don't. I do have situations that distributor, again, it's collecting orders for a period of time. They're sending one invoice when, the store expires or when the order time frame is finished. So obviously credit cards or invoice requests. A fairly unique one that you get occasionally would be like employee payroll deduction options, where your customer doesn't want their employees paying for it. They're not using a personal credit card or anything like that, but we're just going to pull it from their paycheck. So there's some unique ways that you can set that up at the back end of the store to where they enter their employee ID number or whatever it is. So most employers have ID numbers. I know we do anyways. So
how would that work? So then the customer, just like corporate or HR or whoever, pays Sage, or the suppliers rather, for those products, but then they on the back end do the deductions on their own?
Yeah, so basically, usually if you're running into that type of situation, is on the distributor side, it's really no different than just invoicing your customer at the end of the order date. And then what that's basically, you can also pull the report of like, hey, this is how they checked out. Here's the ID numbers that actually placed the orders in the store. So it'd be a matter of probably just invoicing your customer at the end, or the company itself is paying with a credit card, but you're sending them a separate report with the actual employee numbers on there. One that's more popular, especially with like stores that are incorporating like new hires and things, or awards or incentives and things like that, has been like the employee credits, where it does require a login ID to be set up, but you can say, hey Gabe, you get $100 to spend in the store. If you exceed that, you can pay with your own credit card, but you have $100 that you can spend on whatever you want. So if you want a tumbler, you want a bag, you want a shirt, go for it. Use the 100. So the distributor will basically say, okay, you have 10 employees, each are getting $100. I'm invoicing you for 1,000. We'll apply those credits to each person. So there's no like transacting technically happening in the store unless they exceed that, if you want to give them that option. So we could work out any kind of payment method. So I encourage people to get creative if your client is getting creative.
Well, we love creative clients, right? Because there's money-making opportunities
For
there.
sure.
All right. So again, as we've said a couple of times, this first live episode that we're doing, it's got to be high level just so that in the bonus episodes we can dive into more detail. But I do want to give our live audience the opportunity here, and just to kind of give you an idea, the next bonus episode we're going to do, it's going to talk about more specifically inventory and warehousing options. And then we're also going to talk about showrooms versus stores. And then we're going to do some of the interviews and share those with you. But while we've got you here, we wanted to set aside these last 4 or 5 minutes for any questions from the audience. So does anybody have maybe a really nitty-gritty specific question, or they've done something a certain way and they want to know if anything is done differently? If so, please go ahead and throw those in the chat. While we wait for those, Patrick, do you have any thoughts that we haven't gotten to yet that you want to share with the audience?
I would just say, keep it simple. If you're uncomfortable before you walk into the conversation, give your rep a call. We're happy to kind of give you some guidelines on like, hey, this is what you should probably ask. It would help if like you had, odds are if you're talking about a store, it's probably already a current customer or a conversation that you've had where there's been a difficult situation and now that end buyer is exploring you as an alternative option. So odds are you have some information up front. So if you're concerned about how to approach it, reach out to us. We're happy to do what we can to give you some questions to ask if you can't think of any anyways.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like I don't think we have any questions in the chat. Oh, there we go. CDN network from SNS. What does that mean? That's exciting. That's going to be something that we're going to talk about. It'll be a little while before that episode comes out, but we are going to be sitting down with Nick from SNS, and he told us about this. It's kind of similar to Sanmar's PSST, but why don't you explain that a little more?
Yeah, so it's their contract decorator network. So again, it's very similar to PSST. I would do this because I just was kind of curious on my own, just finding out more information. Just literally go to Google, type in Alpha Broder SNS contract decorator network, or I think it's contractor decorator network. I can't remember if it's contract or contractor, but take a look at that. It's been a program that's been around for a while, apparently. So I'm excited for Nick to kind of tell us more about that. And
that's basically just direct shipping from Alpha and SNS to these decorators, and that's included rather than going in between.
Right. Yeah. They don't have any minimum like dollar amount you have to spend to get free shipping from SNS to their decorator. So it's kind of similar to Sanmar's PSST. You get free shipping when you ship to one of their in-network decorators.
Right. And that kind of also that ties into what you were saying about like the products you have in the store. Like,
right.
Programs like those are really how you make the most bang for your buck by, these are big suppliers, Alpha and SNS and Sanmar, that have some of the highest quality and most popular products that people are looking for. So it's not like you're shortchanging your customer on options. You have everything there, but you're saving yourself some time, money, and headache in the middle of that to, keep some of your own margin in the sales process.
Oh, 100%, yeah. And their minimums aren't going to be, there might be some products that don't have a 1 minimum, but I know a lot of them are 1s. So like if you need a couple Nike polos, it's pretty easy to work that out with Sanmar. So good question.
Any suggestions on the best way to handle old inventory? We don't want a ton of overhead, so we can purchase new inventory.
I guess it would just kind of depend on if the client paid for that up front or not, or if you paid for the inventory up front. If you guys paid for the inventory up front, then I would offer it back to them at net cost. At the end of the day, it's their stuff, right? So if you need to get rid of it, encourage your client to run like a promotion or something, post something on Facebook. If they do an event, they have extra giveaways at that point. It's tough to say without a little more information, but if you took on the inventory payment yourself, then I would try and get at least a break even if you can by running some kind of promotion with them.
And I'd recommend, like we've said, reach out to your rep about that because they might have some more specific help for you. Are most people charging for stores or doing them for free? And I think this is going to have to be our last question because we're about to run over.
It's a service you're providing, so
charge for it. Your
does
time.
a lawyer charge for his time?
That's right. The market will bear it. Your customers will bear it. And in fact, you'll probably make even more money because you will become a consultant that has the authority in the industry. All right. Please review key headers you'd mentioned, shipping, payment, types of stores. Okay, we got to wrap up because we're going over time. But yes, so we did talk about today, and you can, again, we're going to post this everywhere you get your podcast. We talked about kind of the different methods of shipping, why you would choose them, different payment methods you can set up, and different types of stores year-round, customers, for businesses, for hospitals, for schools, all kinds of things. And we're going to dive into more of this on the bonus episodes. We're running over today. I want to respect y'all's time. Thank you so much for hopping on. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast to catch all those bonus episodes, and we'll see you there. Thanks for hopping on, Patrick.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.